architect, journalist, sociologist, philosopher.
You named four professions. I think I find it difficult to see the separations between those. So I think that basically I'm obviously interested in all those directions without necessarily being the embodiment of any of them. And
not even architect?
No, not even architect, because I think that part of my so-called success in architecture has been exactly how my criticality towards architecture and my to some extent even my not so much dislike, my skepticism about architecture. I think it's very similar to Mircea Prada, who is basically a very good designer because she is very skeptical about design and even skeptical about fashion.
But she creates and she sells clothes, and you create buildings.
Yeah.
And what will stay in the history? Buildings or ideas?
I hope both. Yeah. Well, but anyway, I think that today I don't know anybody who's concerned in that way with history. I think that we've become all so fragile and so mostly fragile is maybe the best word. We all sense a kind of sense of fragility that makes us completely incapable even of thinking, okay, but this building will stay forever. I think we have no forever anymore.
No, but we never had any forever.
Yeah, but I think that even when I was younger, there were architects who were kind of saying yes, but at least this kind of thing. I remember them. Yeah, they were there. It did exist.
But history is something, don't you think? It's something important.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, in this show, it's very important.
Exactly. So architecture could belong to history too. I mean, not saying it's a past, but saying it will stay.
No, of course it does. Of course it does, but not in a way that you can either derive pleasure or confidence from.
Westland.
Westland is I think that is a very interesting situation in Holland. Holland, as you know, was a country that almost had to invent itself or create itself. And I think what we show in this exhibition is that in the 17th century there was a coalition of scientists and artists and court people that mutually reinforced each other. One of our most important poets was a scientist who was close to the court, who helped one of the queens to design a garden, and that was a geometric garden where they planted different species. And we have a kind of theory that Descartes, who came to Holland when he was 23 and enrolled in the Dutch army, kind of benefited from that kind of milieu and actually was inspired in his own mathematics by exactly that kind of rigor, which we now call Cartesian, with this orthogonal, the imagination of the orthogonal, which is there from Descartes, but also to Mondrian, and which is still. Now the Westland is a kind of total immediate expression of that, and we discovered even that kind of some of the big greenhouses are on the exact side of that garden in still the same configuration.
Wow.
You can really recognize kind of 16th, 17th century patterns there. So it is a kind of rare continuity of cultural layers. And
when you go to your office, you go through Westland, right?
Scandalously, we completely ignored it. It's 10 kilometers away from our office, but kind of before Countryside, we never went there. And so when we first went, we were completely astonished to discover a kind of world of kind of utter rigor, adventure, experiment. So now we're close.
But you go through Westland to go to work, and it makes you think. I mean, I try to speak about your everyday life.
I understand. No, but the motorway just avoids Westland.
Ah.
Yeah, so you don't see it. That's the point. But it's there, but you don't see it.
So it was something important to discover it.
It was super important to discover it, and also to discover this whole domain. And we made two simultaneous discoveries. On the one hand, Westland. On the other hand, Wageningen University, which is the key university for agriculture in the Netherlands, but also that had already in the 20th century huge influence in Africa and China in terms of inventing new species of rice and others. So a very international kind of world where we became involved. And basically this part of the experience, if I had known what I know now, I'm not sure I would have become an architect, and I think that in the near future I'm going to continue that involvement.
You could have become what?
Maybe related to plants, related to agriculture.
Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank
Lloyd Wright. I mean, basically, the problem. The problem is that today, in a way, even people that you know a lot about, like Le Corbusier or Frank Lloyd Wright, kind of seem complete caricatures, either very vain or very small, or with kind of ridiculous dresses, or Frank Lloyd Wright. You know that there was a kind of appalling master, almost slave relationship between him and his students. So in a way, the true quality and the true intelligence of all those masters is covered under deep layers of gossip and detail.
But for you?
But if you're in a building like this one, and if you're going to spend kind of maybe 3 weeks here, and if you kind of think about how to tell a story, this building is an unbelievable, brilliant tool, almost like no other tool. So it's a kind of absolute piece of genius, and it's very paradoxical that all artists always complain about it and say it's so difficult, cannot hang a painting, but that actually it's a fantastic machine. And so, initially the Guggenheim expected us to make a statement, Koolhaas and Frank Lloyd Wright, but we totally refused that, and in a way all we did was put wallpaper on the walls of Frank Lloyd Wright. And so we use him, but also enhance him, I think, decorate him.
Nature versus countryside, or not versus?
Well, basically we were extremely aware that we were not being that the word countryside was a wrong word, because it doesn't include nature, it doesn't include, but we couldn't find a better word. So, but the section of preservation is the part where we can really deal with nature, and I have been, maybe you saw earlier presentations we did in the Venice Biennale, totally fascinated by the whole idea of preservation, both in architecture and because what the problem is that as soon as we start thinking about preservation, we want to preserve what is important, we want to preserve what is kind of really beautiful, we want to, and very quickly you are preserving what is exceptional. And I think that preservation is important, but it's important not only to show exceptions, but also to show the kind of regular thing, the normal thing, even the banal and the sad thing. So I've been kind of trying to stretch this idea of preservation in architecture and in culture. Now, what we are facing in nature is that the word preservation and the word global warming are already two totally opposite terms, because global warming will change everything. Every jungle, every landscape, every desert, every mountain will be drastically changed. So it's clear that preservation as a kind of keeping things the same is not going to happen. And then and so, for instance, the word preservation is now applied to the north of Russia, to permafrost, but it's already too late because it's actually melting. The word preservation is also kind of used in the case of the gorillas in Rwanda, and there it's been successful, and because of the success, the gorilla multiplied, and from a quantity of 600 they went to 1800. So suddenly there's a kind of overcrowding, and so preservation, then the very success of preservation. So it's a very, so for me, preservation is the beginning of a new kind of instability. And I think that will be increasingly both the problem and the issue vis-a-vis our relationship with nature. Because we have to preserve a lot of nature to deal with climate change, but I think the act of preservation itself changes everything.
Descartes, Marie-Antoinette.
I have a kind of deep affinity for French culture. Not necessarily for Marie-Antoinette, but I simply like the narratives of French culture, and so Marie-Antoinette was for us almost a joke, but a very nice way to illustrate how the countryside was, in the Roman time, really a domain in which you could exist and lead a kind of full life, and how already in the moment of Marie-Antoinette, it was a kind of shrunken little bubble, kind of unconnected to the rest. So we used her simply to show that shrinkage of a concept.
Humanity in 30 years.
What?
Humanity in 30 years.
Oh, humanity in 30 years. That's basically, if I look at Africa, I think it's there are many signs that make me very optimistic and very confident. If I look at America, there are sort of very many signs that make me totally make me panic.
And Europe?
If I look at Europe, it's simply because I'm such a convinced European that I don't want to ever say something negative about Europe. And in Europe, I see kind of reasons to be both. In China, I also see reasons to be both, but also reasons to be optimistic.
Next dream. What is your next dream?
Well, I'm at an age that both the word next and the word dream are losing their significance. So I basically don't speculate anymore in terms of another chapter, but or rather, that's wrong. I'm involved in a transformation and a transition from one form of relationship with architecture to another, and I think that in this exhibition we are opening up many different new territories for architectural speculation, and I fully plan to continue in some of them. and to continue to explore them and to combine them with other forms of knowledge.
Koolhaas. What's the meaning of Koolhaas?
I leave that to others.
Pardon?
I leave that to others.